Thursday night, week 5. Let's get it here at the Voice of College Football and the College Football Show. Appreciate you stopping by. And the deal is with this particular show, Monday through Wednesday, 10 a.m. Eastern time, Monday through Wednesday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 10 a.m. Eastern time. We come your way prime time, post game, whatever the case might be, Thursday and Friday. So it depends on the matchups, depends on the situation. Tonight, merely one game, Army Temple. So apologies to you, Army and Temple fans, because we are not waiting for the Army Temple matchup to conclude before we go live here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you stopping by. We will be here for an hour minimum, and then it depends on you whether you want to support or want the show to go any longer. Then we will certainly listen to all of you. Reminds me of one of my more favorite spiritual video creators. I'll not get into that. It's week 5. Let's get to it. We've got a caller on the line. So before we get to any of the matchups, we will open it up to your calls. And we want to hear from you first and foremost. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. We got Nick on the line. Hey, Nick.
Hey, Mark. How's it going? Can you hear me?
I got you now. How you doing?
Good. I'm good. How are you?
I am doing just fine. What's the good word?
Wanted to get your quick thoughts on it's a pretty interesting way Nebraska lost. But I know some people are kind of going back and forth, or not back and forth, but some people are saying same old Nebraska. I think that's a bit of an overreaction to one game. We'll see how the season plays out. But what are your thoughts on their upcoming matchup this weekend?
Well, this is going to be the easiest game they play in the Big Ten schedule the entire season. So they should not be threatened this weekend. They're a 10-point favorite on the road and produce just an awful, awful football team. Not really much to offer there. They're a fairly tough football team. I'll give them that. But they're not a good football team. And Nebraska should win this game easily, but until I really sit down and analyze this game to make a prediction on it, I would stay away from 10 points on the road just because of Nebraska's recent history of underachieving in every possible way. But I will say this, that I am extremely confident that they will win this game. There is something awfully wrong if they lose this game. The one thing I will say about the Illinois game is that even though this took on Scott Frost proportion breakdown, considering that there were 4 plays on defense. There were 6 total plays in overtime, and they got completely outplayed 6 consecutive plays. So that doesn't seem like a big deal, but that's when the game was on the line. They got outplayed 6 consecutive plays. They get gashed for a 21-yard run. They get completely taken off guard, didn't cover themselves and cover the tight end and gave up a wide open touchdown pass. And then on defense, or the Illini defense, stuffed them 4 consecutive losing tackle for loss plays. And so they blew the game when they had control of the game in the fourth quarter. And in overtime, when it was 0-0, they just melted. So that looks like Scott Frost, Nebraska, but Matt Rule is a much better coach and they're a better team and all of that. The one other takeaway I have from that game that should give Nebraska fans some hope and optimism and give critics a pause to put the brakes on would be that is the first time Dylan Raiola has faced adversity at this level. So the first 3 games were all blowouts, easy situation, first quarter, second quarter, big lead, cruise home to victory. This is the first time he's had to play under pressure against the best team on the schedule thus far. So the opponent's better, plus the snaps are meaningful in the fourth quarter. So he had to play under pressure for the first time. And it didn't go so well. But he'll learn from that, I would expect. And not many true freshman quarterbacks in his situation pull through under those circumstances the very first time.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm still really curious what Nebraska's gonna look like in that Ohio State game. I guess I wouldn't be shocked by either outcome, but when you have a talent like Dylan Raiola, if he can develop, I think they could give Ohio State a game for a little while. But I don't know, maybe Ohio State's talent just completely swallows them up and spits them out. So, but I definitely have that game circled because I think that could be a pretty interesting game where we learn about Dylan Raiola's development and then we learn more about both teams because Ohio State hasn't played hardly anybody or nobody basically. But yeah, wanted to get your thoughts as well on what game did I see here? Oh yeah, Georgia Alabama. Did you have you you may have not have released it yet, but do you have a pick? You don't need to say it now, but you can kind of give some insight onto what your pick is with what you say about that game. But did you pick a winner?
I have not picked a winner. I will pick a winner because that's what I do. We recorded a segment just a couple hours ago with Steve Merrill from Wager Talk. And so folks, check that out. It should be on the Georgia, Alabama, and SEC channels, I believe. And so he runs his 10,000 simulations. So he kind of gives us a two-part look at it. He gives us the mathematical model, and then he says, okay, put that aside. This is how I believe these type of games trend. So he gives us the more intangible touch on it. Now, the way I look at it is that Georgia has a much different quarterback situation than Alabama. So we'll start there. And I know that I have a lot of confidence in Carson Beck not having an implosion. He has a high floor, not an extremely high ceiling. He has a high floor. Jalen Milroe is a little bit more of a wild card. He's a fairly consistent player, so I'm not making him out to be a wild card, except for in this matchup against Carson Beck. He's a wild card. He's more of a wild card than Carson Beck, but he can also play a more dynamic role in the game, as he did last year in the SEC championship game when Alabama was holding on to a one-score lead, got the ball back, and never gave it back to Georgia, chewed up the last 4 minutes of the game, much of which because Jalen Milroe was that great of an athlete to actually elude and power himself past Georgia defenders a couple different times running the football to hang on to the ball, preserve the lead, and run out the clock. So that's pretty impressive. I don't know that we've seen enough football out of Jalen Milroe this year to understand what the Kalen DeBoer impact could be. So for as great as Nick Saban is, Kalen DeBoer is a better offensive mind, offensive coach, and quarterback developer. And so if anybody could get through to Jalen Milroe and develop him even more, I'm not saying Kalen DeBoer would be the best, but he's in that top 5 to 10 range. So we may see a better Jalen Milroe this time. This being the first big game that he's played this season than what we saw almost exactly a year ago against Texas when he looked like the problem to many people. Georgia.
The coaching staff thought he was the problem early on.
Yeah, they benched him the next game. And then they saw a worse quarterback play, and they had no choice, and they brought him back, and there we go.
I think that's one of the most fascinating things. It seems like we see it every year, and we'll see how this plays out with Oklahoma. It seems like those players are excited for their new quarterback. Yeah, I think that their Oklahoma benching their quarterback, I think, was overreaction, in my opinion. So we'll see how that plays out for them. But I've always found it fascinating, and it's a real thing in team sports with leaders. Like sometimes a guy might not be technically as skilled as another guy, but his charisma and leadership elevates the play of everyone around him or his team. And you can see a team sometimes you in a way sometimes teams tell you who they want the starter to be at quarterback. So it's kind of interesting. I think that's what we saw last year with Alabama. And was it USF they played, and it was a really ugly game?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Those guys were just not – the effort was not there whatsoever. I think that was pretty obvious. Because they had picked Jalen Miller, at least in my opinion, that's what it looked like to me. And I think you also have seen that this year with Michigan. Alex Orji had a terrible stat line passing the football. Let's be honest, it basically wasn't even the thing. But I felt like the team as a whole, with some coaching adjustments, played harder. They had an identity to them that I think, were pretty clearly lacking under Davis Warren. So I know that's a side note, but it's so interesting to me how that seems to play a factor.
Well, it's not a side note. It's a great discussion, and it's a great point that you make, because this has been something that's been talked about for years in football regarding quarterback battles, and making the comparison between sometimes they're two very similar players that you just are trying to decide as a coaching staff who is the better quarterback during August camp. In this case, it was, well, we got two very different players, and so which one is going to be more effective in their limitations? And the initial thought was by Sharon Morris and his staff was Davis Warren. And I understood that selection, even though I thought Alex Orji the entire offseason, I thought, I know it's being discussed and it's a quarterback battle and they're not claiming a starter here, but I was surprised when it was Davis Warren as the selection, because I thought it was going to be Orji the entire time. But once it became Davis Warren, I thought, I get it. If he can be something that we've seen of Michigan quarterbacks under Jim Harbaugh, aside from JJ, if he can be Cade McNamara, Jake Rudock, Wilton Spate, if he can be that guy and their defense is 90% of what it was last year, we can't expect it to be quite as good as it was last year. And they have all these other pieces in place with an offensive line and a running game. Then why would you not go with a guy that can complete 13 out of 20 for 130 yards and throw a touchdown? But that guy can't give the ball away 3 times a game.
Yeah, and I think this, I'm not a big fan of this guy. I'll call him out a little bit, but I don't know if you listened or if you know much about Chris Ballas, Wolverine, quote unquote beat writer. I call him Clickbait Chris, but he's still, there's some people within the Michigan program, and even I think some coaches based off of what TJ Ronan said over on the Michigan site through your network. Some people are feeding information to reporters saying Davis Warren is still getting 40% of the snaps with the ones. That is, to me, there is no indication of that. Sharon Moore has said he's not going to make a switch back to Davis Warren. I don't understand why. I think it was when you were talking to Steve, a quarter of the possessions end in an interception. I mean, I don't know how you could ever go back to that guy. I don't even know how that's a discussion. That sounds insane to me. That sounds like complete and total homerism. Like we fell in love with this guy who had a really cool story. I think it was, I don't know if he had leukemia or some kind of cancer, and that COVID and we all know the story. It's a cool story, but story alone, man, is not enough. And the reality of Davis Warren is, even though he's dealing with a receiving core that can't gain consistent separation and an offensive line that's leaky in pass pro, that still does not explain that when the bullets are live and dudes are bearing down on him, he throws the ball up for grabs. Like that's his instinct. And you cannot play that guy. You cannot play that guy. Like I'd say the biggest difference between him and Alex Orji at this point is there was a 3rd down and long in the red zone with Michigan. This last game Michigan played, and Alex Orji rolled out and he was trying to pass it to Marlon Klein. There was no separation, and he just chucked it like through the back of the end zone. And he clearly did that on purpose. Davis Warren would have thrown that probably right to the defender. Like that's one of those classic play. I mean, that's the biggest difference between the two. One dude is turning the ball over and one's not. So I think it's, really interesting. And a second thing that's interesting, I think, about Alex Orji is when you look at him developing as a passer means something totally different with Alex Orji than it does your standard quarterback, because he's literally not completing passes more than 5 yards. I mean, most of his passes are behind the line of scrimmage. So what does this team look like if Alex Orji still has the running threat, but it's not going to take much for him to really, become more of a factor in the passing game, because we live in a world right now where if Alex Orji threw for 110 passing yards, we'd be like, whoa, massive improvement. You know what I mean? And like most quarterbacks, you'd be like, what the heck is this? So it's going to be interesting to see how he progresses, because as a passer, I really just don't think he's never going to be an elite passer. But I don't know, that you're just working with so little there to begin with from a passing standpoint that even just a little bit of improvement could make a big difference for the offense.
You've said so much there, a lot of good stuff that my mind's going in about 17 directions. So I don't know if I'll be able to keep track of everything that crossed my mind during that time. But the first thing, no, not at all.
I was just going to say a quick side note. So my apologies if I'm a little scattered-brained. I had a procedure earlier today and they put me under. So I'm still my brain's kind of a little wonky. But anyway, go ahead.
We hope everything's okay.
Yeah, it's all fine. Just a standard thing. So
okay. No, not at all. That was great stuff. It just gets my wheels churning, and I should probably sit down here and write point by point when I think of all these things, but I'll try to recoup all of it. One is that going back to, I don't know if you saw Michigan podcast this week, there were a few things I pushed back on Steve, some other counterpoints that he made in a very effective way that pushed me back on a few points. So point number one was, I will never relinquish that they should have gotten a transfer quarterback. Now, Steve's counterpoint is that even though he was agreeing with me months ago, and especially once he saw, the Texas game and the other games this season, even the Fresno State game, that now that he has seen this USC game, he's countering with, well, you didn't need to mess with the culture. I don't agree with that, because I believe that if your culture is that strong, we're talking about quarterbacks who have track records at other schools. We're not talking about guys that have run amok and not proven to be capable, reliable players at other programs. We're talking about guys that showed up, put in the work, put in the film study, capably quarterbacked other schools. So the culture at Michigan's not just so high that nobody can break the code and become.
That's a ridiculous assumption. That's an assumption. That's honestly, I don't want to say detriment, but that's almost kind of taking a shot at a guy like he's not good enough to assimilate, or like, I mean, have a little bit of faith in your coaches if you think you have the right coaching staff to bring in the right guy. That just because someone's a transfer doesn't mean they can't fit into Michigan's culture. Michigan has brought in some of their best players have been transfers. Sure. They're one of their best players.
I think he was thinking more specifically about the quarterback position.
Yeah.
So that was point number one. I didn't relinquish on that one at all. The one that I caused me to pause a little bit was my point was, and of course it worked out for Michigan. So in this one situation, I was proven wrong. However, when Michigan trotted out onto the field down by 4 points on the final drive, I was thinking they need to put in Davis Warren. Or if Jack Tuttle was healthy enough and had practiced enough, which apparently he has not, I would put in Jack Tuttle, because of course he's got experience. He has started games at Indiana, say what you will, but obviously he's played Big Ten football. So he has a level of competency in these situations. Because my thought was, and I was proven wrong, at least in this instance, well, they can't run you cannot run on a 90-yard drive in 2.5 minutes. you got to throw the ball.
You can, you just don't expect it. Like,
Yes. I don't think that that's something that can be executed on a regular basis.
You can't rely on that. That's not something you can rely on in a game-by-game execution, even though it does seem like Michigan tends to break off more big runs. And I think one of the reasons for that is because Michigan's running game is let's say in some ways decently more complex than what it actually looks like. But yeah, in a sense, I mean, I would say actually you weren't necessarily wrong, because it wasn't Alex Orji who won the game. He didn't throw. So I still think that stands. It's Khalil Mullings turning into what I call baby beast mode.
Yeah.
Looking like he literally is starting to look like a college version of Marshawn Lynch with the way he runs. I mean, if he does not drag those, it's funny, USC fans are still calling them Bruins, those transfers back end. That's disrespectful. But yeah, I mean, if he does not drag those dudes like ragdolls, Michigan absolutely doesn't win the game unless, there's some type of massive coverage bust. Like earlier in the game, there was I don't know if you saw, there was a clip going around on Twitter of the All-22, and it showed Samaj on a third down and long. Samaj Morgan just destroyed his guy, broke his ankles, and was wide open, and the offensive line didn't hold up. And if Alex Orji just would have looked that way and just tossed it in the air, it would have been a touchdown. So unless something like that happens, yeah, they wouldn't have won the game. And honestly, with what played out, you shouldn't have expected them to win that. Like, they shouldn't have won that game with the way they played in the second half. So yeah,
to extend on my point, they made those big runs, but besides that, and you have to credit the huge runs by Mullings and by Edwards in the first half. But outside of those runs, they were doing nothing on the ground. And now they're facing 90 yards, 88 yards, whatever the situation, 2:45 on the clock. So teams cannot typically run the ball down the field with no passing threat or no passing game. But obviously, Mullings breaks off the beast mode run, as you mentioned, 65 yards. And for those USC fans, by the way, are they talking about those guys being Bruins last year when UCLA had the #1 defense in the conference and they had like one of the worst defenses in the conference? Is that what they're talking about? Seems kind of strange. But and when UCLA beat them last year. So my thought was, is Davis Warren a good option to have on the final drive? No, I wasn't arguing that to myself watching the game. I was just saying, well, what's the difference between them running on first down, getting stuff like they have the last 2.5 quarters, and it's 2nd and 9, and then maybe Alex Orji throws 3 straight incompletions, or maybe one gets them 3 yards because that's how far he's throwing the football, and they lose the game on downs, versus Davis Warren. Possibly, there's a likelihood that he comes in and throws an interception to lose the game. But what's the difference? He at least has shown the capability of leading a team down the field, passing the football to score. That was my only consideration. Steve Dace countered with, well, you would have lost the team if you would have benched Orji.
I do understand that point. Like,
I understand that point. I don't agree with it, but I understand it.
I see it from this way. I see it from, okay, it's clear your team is just playing with more effort. These guys want Orji. Maybe they understand, okay, like if he loses this game because he can't pass, maybe his team is like, well, this is still the right guy, but like Davis Warren was playing in the earlier games and Alex was just kind of thrust in here this week as the starter and didn't have any real time in other games to develop. So maybe even if you would have lost the game, you wouldn't have lost the team. I do think from a perspective of, you're kind of evaluating, do I risk losing this game and our season kind of derailing here, or do I risk losing the team? So that's a tough decision. But hey, lucky for Sharon, he didn't have to. He doesn't have to have to deal with it. So,
and Nick, to go back to your earlier point about the team deciding who the starting quarterback is by their effort and commitment to that player. Again, that's been part of the quarterback battle discussion for a long, long time. And it's clearly Alex Orji. However, I got to say, I don't understand it. I've never been in that situation as an offensive lineman or a running back or a defensive player to say, okay, our starting quarterback is the dude that I want, that I believe in, so I'm going to play harder. Now, I doubt if it's a conscious decision, but still, I don't. Now, as a wide receiver, that may be different. I actually, if I'm going to be selfish as a wide receiver for Michigan, I'd rather have Davis Warren out there if I'm just going to be selfish, again, with that caveat, because his 18 for 28 day with 2 interceptions is better for me when he throws for 180 yards than Alex Orji throwing for 35 yards and me never seeing the football. And I'm running routes and I'm running against air and I'm not expecting the football to come anywhere close to me versus I'm running legitimate routes and Davis Warren may throw me the football. Like, that's the only position I would understand being affected by the quarterback decision in terms of an effort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. The only way I can really kind of grasp it, I mean, I played team sports in high school and whatnot, and it's definitely being a leader is a thing, but there's several components there. I mean, Alex Orji doesn't have really the passing skill figured out yet, but I mean, I do think when a team has felt that they have the right guy, they maybe feel like they just, because if a guy has a special trait or he's just there's just something about him that makes him a difference maker that could come into play at any moment. I think guys maybe play a little harder because they feel like they have the guy at quarterback, where as long as he's steadying the ship, they always have a chance to win the game. Like, for instance, maybe this is a poor example because Patrick Mahomes is it's probably disrespectful to put him in the same sentence with Alex Orji, but as a separate example, haven't the Chiefs, haven't all their Super Bowls, weren't they down by double digits in every single one? Pretty sure they were.
49ers, yes. Eagles, yes. They've won 3, right?
They've won 3. The 49ers.
Oh, then they beat San Francisco again. Yeah.
Yeah, they were down by double digits. Now, and one of them was like later in the game. They were down by like 10 plus or something like that. But I think guys just feel like it doesn't matter if we're down by 14. We always feel like, whether it's logical or not, they just.
The difference between, and I know you already know this, and you already stated up front, you're not comparing Alex Orji and Pat Mahomes, but even if it was a poor man's Pat Mahomes, let's say it was.
Doesn't really, obviously they're not going to feel that way about Alex's passing, but maybe they feel that way about his running ability. I mean, he's a dude who
we're talking about
I think can be an elite runner.
Player,
I don't think he
Pat
is
Mahomes.
yet.
See the thing about Pat Mahomes.
I mean, you see when he runs, he's a truck. Like, dudes just
I
bounce off of him.
Truck,
I actually have a funny theory. I think he's just bound and determined to not get tackled. I don't know if you've ever noticed that, but he will not go down.
Yeah,
even
I don't know.
Even out of bounds.
Maybe I didn't notice that because I was still shaking my head.
Yeah,
it's just ridiculously.
And then lastly, I'll just touch on this real quick. This is my opinion. I don't know if you saw.
Are we having a miscommunication?
I'll just say my opinion first.
Like,
I think Texas is far and away
the
best team in the country. And the reason why I say that
is anybody out there catching this?
They have the perfect mixture right now of head coach, elite quarterback, surprisingly better defense, especially from a depth perspective, which is what made Michigan elite last year, was all the depth. And then that offensive line is ridiculous.
And everybody out there hear me.
If you look at PFS grade for the defensive player of the week, which was Josiah Stewart, at a 95 overall. And I know you can say what you want about PFF. Definitely flawed, but they have some interesting insight. And I've heard this, but Josiah Stewart, at least right now, is playing like a first rounder. And I think it's safe to assume he's going to be in that first to second round category, at least if he continues to play like this. But you're talking about a Michigan defensive line, if that's the case, where you have 3, potentially 4 guys that are first or second rounders. I think Derek Moore, he was a top 100 kid coming out of high school.
Hey,
he
Nick.
is a
Hello.
Can
you
he's
hear
going
me?
to have to up that production a little bit, but he could absolutely play himself into a high NFL draft pick. And
everybody
go
in the
back
chat,
and
do
watch
me a
that
favor.
Texas game.
And when I cut off,
It was almost
Nick,
even worse from what I
you're just gonna have
remember
to
going
tell
back
him
and
Mark was not
rewatching
being
how
mean.
quickly
You just couldn't
that
hear him.
offensive
So he
line
finally had to end the
asserted
discussion to take
its
some other
dominance.
call.
I mean,
So we will do that. Sorry, Nick. So somebody in the chat, please tell Nick, maybe he can hear me now, that for the last 10 minutes, he can't hear me. So we can't have a dialogue. But we've got another call here. But Nick, thank you so much for the call. Don't take offense to that, Nick. Understand that, yeah, we had some kind of weird, that's never happened before, where somebody could not hear me. That was very strange. So Nick, call back sometime. Not tonight. But let's go to our next call. We've got Alex on the line.
Hey, Mark. How you doing? Thanks for having
great.
me on.
How are you?
I'm great. So I'm sure you heard about the whole Barstool thing, and what's his name
I have
putting
no
up.
idea what you're talking about.
So the founder of Barstool said that he'd pay up to $3 million for Michigan NIL quarterback going forward.
Oh, that's right. He's a Michigan guy. I can't think of his name.
So it had me thinking, how good could this current team be with like a Cam Ward, a Quinn Ewers, and I really love your shows. I respect your opinion. So I thought I'd call it and ask, with a 4 or 5-star guy, like not DJU, of course, how good do you think this team could be? Do you think we could defend? I literally think we could be defending national champions if Sharon Moore, it's really Ward Manuel's fault. He's horrible. He never got along with Harbaugh, and I think they left us in the dust, but I'm curious your opinion.
Well, if we just take it as is, that seems like a pretty obvious take that, okay, take just what is maybe the most abysmal quarterback situation in all power conference football and replace it with one of the best quarterbacks. Cam Ward is playing out of his mind, as you well know. However, there's a little nuance there to consider. One being that Michigan doesn't play that style of football unless Sharon Moore is going to transform this program, which he may eventually do. He has talked about, as you well know, being a more balanced offense going forward, but that is certainly not what he has at wide receiver now. So I don't know that would fit out, that would play out quite to the extent that many people believe that it would, but certainly, yes, anybody would take an elite quarterback over the worst quarterback situation in the Big Ten.
Yep. And I don't even think it has to be Ward. It could be your quarterback. I mean, I know he left really early, and there was the drama with that whole thing and his dad, but anybody. I mean, it's even Childs is his turnover machine, but it does have me thinking about, our wide receiver room, and it's as bad as it gets, but Samaj Morgan, when he was a freshman, he looked way better than this. And it's also got me thinking about the quarterback impact. I mean, they have bad wide receivers, but when you have a bad quarterback, it's just as bad when you're a wide receiver.
Yeah, I would like to do, if I had the time to commit to it, go through all the transfer quarterbacks during this offseason and determine when they signed, which wouldn't take a ton of time for any one quarterback, but to look at the 30 that signed to see who would have been available after, what are we looking at? They win the national championship on January 10th or whatever the date was. How long was it after that Harbaugh made the decision to go?
It was pretty close, but And then there was a grace period because in most states you have to wait a couple weeks before you're like, that's our guy. And I do think we lost out on some couple people, but there was also some quarterbacks. Like you said, I'd have to look it up, but I'm sure there was. I just think Orgy, they saw something from him in the first part of camp, and he deceived them or something. I don't know. It's just so confusing.
Yeah, if you give Michigan the average quarterback in the Big Ten, they're competing for the championship in the Big Ten. Shoot, they may compete anyway. I don't want to count them out. I would be the last person to count them out.
Same. I just think the national championship is, or anything along those lines, is completely, that's out of the window for sure.
It seems like it. And we're going to see over the next several difficult games. I don't know if Minnesota qualifies. I don't think so. Even though the spread's only 9, that's wow. What did Michigan beat them by last year? Like 52-10? And this Minnesota team's not as good as that one was, I don't believe. But anyway, we'll see against Illinois. I'm even going to take Oregon and Ohio State off the board. I'm going to think Illinois, and there's somebody else in there. Michigan State, if they continue to develop and improve, that we'll see if this effort out of Michigan, we can't take it for granted that this Michigan team that just showed up and backs against the wall, drew energy from the crowd, the situation, that team's going to show up all the time.
Yeah, I really want to believe it. And I do think that we could still beat the Buckeyes if we just play our game, but it's definitely not sustainable for sure. And it's tough. I'd rather take Shoelace or Gardner, anybody.
I would have loved to have been in Ann Arbor throughout the spring and throughout the summer to see every rep that Alex Orgy took.
Me too.
Quarterback, passing reps to be able to think, did they watch this for this entire time? And then, okay, I get it that they decided on Davis Warren, even though they were not seeing out of Davis Warren the stuff of a Big Ten championship quarterback, but they thought, well, we've got to throw the ball to some extent, so I guess we got to play Davis Warren. But then when he was throwing too many passes to the other team, then now they're reverting back to Alex Orgy. Hey, Kentucky made it through a season with less talent, certainly on the defensive side, than this Michigan team with a running back playing quarterback about 4 years ago. Shoot, Lynn Bowden. Playing quarterback. When they took their best wide receiver, put him at quarterback because they got 2 quarterbacks hurt, and he took them to a bowl win. They went 8-5. They beat a lot of decent teams in the SEC, and they basically ran a wildcat. And by the end of the season, he was throwing for 150 yards a game.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. It's definitely just a beat. Beat Ohio State here. For sure.
Gardner. That was one of the most impressive things that I've seen. What was that? Mid-2012? They take one of their wide receivers. They throw him at quarterback. And, of course, he had experience at quarterback in high school. But by the end of the year, by like the second or third game, the guy's one of the 3 or 4 best quarterbacks in the Big Ten.
Yep. Do you remember Tate Forcier?
Oh, yeah.
That was a fun little journey.
Why'd you bring him up?
I was just thinking because it was the same situation. We didn't seem like we had a good quarterback room, and he had that incredible game against Notre Dame, and everything was different, even though he wasn't actually that good.
That was that 43-40 kind of game?
Yeah, he was a freshman. He beat Shoelace out. But then, yeah, but I'll leave you there, Mike. Thanks for having me on. You have a great night.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. You too.
Bye.
Voice of College Football here. And once again, Nick, if you're in the chat, just realized it was this really weird connection where it became obvious. At first, I thought, this guy's just cut me off back and forth. Just will not let me get a word in edgewise. All right. A lot of good things to say there, Nick. Appreciate you being here. All right. This really annoys me the more I see this background. See, that's a blue. I will repeat, a blue LED light up against this wall, but it looks purple. It's a blue LED light because it's supposed to complement all the blue to the show. We thought we would go blue, which reminds me, there we go, with the blue, with our typical, I think it works. I think it works okay. So we've got the traditional red, black, and silver colors, which are the colors of the voice of college football, if you haven't noticed. So we took our traditional colors, but I wanted to go with something different for this show, which is our morning show, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, that we convert to a night show, the college football show on Thursday and Friday, and give it a blue theme, little different color scheme. But the purple's driving me nuts because it is showing up purple, and that's purple, but that purple goes to pink, and the blue goes to, looks like purple. So I got no other options here. We are certainly not going with green, red, no, yellow, no, orange, no. So we've got to go with blue that looks like purple. Adam, appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. There should be a study on whether a soft schedule impacts a team's chances of winning a national title. And I've left this comment up for like 40 minutes because I wanted to get to it. There are so many questions in college football concerning these type situations that there is a theory about, but I would like to see actual metrics put to. Like I get sick of hearing about the trap game. I understand what a trap game is. I understand the theory behind it, but nobody has ever proven that it actually occurs, that a trap game is lost by the favorite any more than any other game. Nobody has ever proven this. You would have to first define the trap game, which I would do if I had the time and it would pay off financially. Like if I knew, okay, 100,000 people are going to watch this video, we can make $1,000 on this video. I'm going to go to work on this. Here we go. Then I would do it. But sorry, we won't get enough views and it won't be financially solvent for me to produce such videos. I would love to do a lot of videos really digging into the sport. But again, it's not a business effective decision to make. But back to this situation. So first I'm going to hit the trap game. Then I'm going to get to Adam's comment because trap game, this is a trap game. Okay, I get the concept. You're playing a good team, then you play a bad team, then you play a good team. And maybe the bad team might be a little bit dangerous, might be a little bit better than people think. And you got a possible letdown off of a win or a loss. And then you're preparing for the next big game. I get it. I get the concept. I understand the concept, but nobody has ever proven that this impacts a favorite. It's never been proven by anyone. That's like I've got a friend who has always told me that, well, in the NFL, well, it's a division game. Okay, it's a division game. Has anyone proven that these games are more difficult than other games? No. Again, put together a metric, put together a hypothesis, and then prove it. So with the trap game, you would define, okay, what a good team is. And then you would have to define by just deduction, if you defined what a good team is to play, then you would have to look through good teams' schedules and see where they play good teams, other good teams, and where in between playing those good teams, they play a team that falls short of your definition of a good team. And if they lose those games more often than they are expected as a favorite to win those games, so then you would have to define that. So, for example, if you're Alabama and you're a top 5 to 10 team in the country and you're playing Georgia, we don't have to explain that. And then you're playing Mississippi State, and then you're playing LSU. Okay, you're playing maybe the best team in the country. 2 weeks later, you're playing another top 10 to 15 team in the country. In between, you're playing a lousy team, maybe the worst team currently in the SEC. That's a trap game. How many times do you lose that game? Of course, you're not going to lose it 50% of the time, but if you would be projected to win that game 90-some% of the time, but you only won it 75 or 80% of the time, then I would buy into the trap theory. But again, nobody has proven this. It's just like we will move on to this situation that Adam's bringing up. There should be a study on whether a soft schedule impacts a team's chances of winning a national title. We could take it to the other end of the spectrum. Does a overtly difficult schedule, does that wear on a team, beat up a team to the point of course, if they just flat out lose the games, then they never compete for a national title because they don't get to the playoff. But even if they survive it, did they get beaten down by a brutally tough schedule? On the flip side, did a soft schedule prepare a team? Well, we're going to have less examples of this going forward because Texas and Oklahoma have joined the SEC. Oregon, Washington, USC, UCLA have joined the Big Ten, and those schedules in conference have become more difficult. And I'm going to guess that somebody has probably already cited 2023 Michigan because they didn't play anybody non-conference. Nothing scheduled. In 2021, 22, and 23, all 3 years, Michigan played just teams with no pulse, absolute nothings in non-conference play. Nothing. And they went on to win the Big Ten championship, get embarrassed by Georgia, win the Big Ten championship, get embarrassed in another sort of embarrassment against TCU, and then win the Big Ten championship and go on and win the national championship. So in all 3 years, they proved to be the best team in the Big Ten. They won the championship after playing nobody non-conference, 0. So, but that's just anecdotal. So I would not rely on that small portion of evidence to prove anything. That's what happened in Michigan's case. 3 consecutive years, atrocious, pathetic, non-conference schedule, then won the Big Ten championship. Ohio State would be your team this year. Pathetic, terrible, non-conference schedule. Will they go on to achieve great things this year? I think Ohio State's the best team in the Big Ten, and I don't even think it's close. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to go out and pound everyone 52-0. I don't mean it's not close, like they're not going to lose a game or not play competitive games. I think Oregon's the second best team as it stands right now. Maybe Michigan will prove otherwise. Shoot, look at what USC did against Michigan. If you take everything into consideration, why do we not come out of this game of week 4, USC at Michigan, and still consider USC to be better than Michigan? Oh, I know a lot of people don't like to hear that. They're going to be mad at me for saying that. I'm not saying that that USC is better than Michigan for sure. I'm not saying that Michigan's better than USC for sure. What did we just watch on Saturday? We watched 2 very different football teams play with 2 very different skill sets, 2 very different philosophies and approaches, 2 very different sets of flaws. And abundant strengths matches and styles. Thank you, Mark. Finally got the brain to work. Styles make fights. It was a great fight. And it came down to the final play of the game on the 4th down at the goal line. So it's kind of funny because I have a lot of USC people that were all up in arms with me over the last several weeks, ever since they played LSU, because just pin me to a wall and just tar and feather me for ever suggesting that coming out of that LSU game, that LSU might be just as good as USC, that game really didn't prove anything to me. Now, we could look at LSU's performances since then and look at USC's performance against Michigan since then and draw more conclusions. And I do believe that USC's performance at Michigan and also just a 48-zip beatdown of Utah State, more impressive, significantly more impressive than LSU backing their way into a win at South Carolina and then being in a tie game against UCLA in Death Valley. Absolutely. But that's not what we're talking about, because I didn't have those scores and those results and those game performances to draw from. I simply had the first game of the season. And what happened? Looked rather similar to what we saw with Michigan taking on USC. The score was tied with 8 seconds left in the game. Oh, this is incredible. How incredibly, don't say stupid, Mark. Don't say stupid. Please don't. Just don't say it. Don't say it. Even though you're thinking it, don't say this out loud. Stupid people can be to be all up in arms that I made the claim that the game was a stalemate. It's 20-20 with 8 seconds left. 8 seconds left. It was 20-20. It's a stalemate. All right, USC won the game. It would be ridiculous for me to say maybe that USC and Michigan was a stalemate. Michigan won the game. They were clearly the better team, right? They won the game in a pretty similar fashion. 23-20, 27-24. Pretty similar. Pretty similar. So what I draw from all this is that you put all the data points together. You put them all together. That's why we play a season. We don't play one game. And since LSU played USC, they have looked like a worse football team. They haven't lost, so they're still alive. We still may see them in the playoff. And don't be surprised if we do. I'm not confident in picking LSU to go to a college football playoff at this point, but I'm just saying I've seen enough football through the years to know, don't count them out. Brian Kelly has reached 4-team playoffs. He could reach a 12-team playoff. And some teams are much different in November or December than they were in September. And however, though, did we not lose? I got to double check on this. What did I see about Harold Perkins? Is he hurt? He's hurt, right? Let's look this up, because this is very damaging if it is to LSU. Okay, yeah. So how long? Yes, Harold Perkins injury. Oh, his season's over. There you go. So shoot, I don't even know if we can evaluate this team now in a sense, because we can argue this back and forth too. Because on one hand, I don't think you can just flat out say, oh, you lost your best player. You give up on the season. You can't be evaluated. It's like an excuse for the rest of the season. No, it's not. But man, the guy's the best player on the team. He is the best player on the team. Maybe he's not correctly used, but anybody who was watching, anyone watching LSU play football 2 years ago in Brian Kelly's first year, when they went to the SEC championship game when they weren't supposed to, but they beat Alabama in the final seconds, won some other games that they were not expected to. when they went to the SEC championship game, there is no way they were going to the SEC championship game that year or finishing it with a 10-4 record without Harold Perkins. He was the best defensive player in college football in 2022. I watched the Arkansas game, the Bama game, on down the line. I watched all those games, and this guy was taking over games. Why they moved him to be an inside linebacker, I've heard that NFL scouts say that's his future, and they wanted to accommodate and, keep him in a happy headspace. So if the NFL scouts said, hey, this guy, regardless of what he does coming off the edge as this incredible player that's batting passes in the air left and right, picking passes off, like strip sacking quarterbacks left and right, winning games, regardless of what you just saw, he's got to play inside linebacker in the NFL. Therefore, we want to accommodate him. And I get that difficult decision to make by a head coach trying to accommodate the player versus but you cannot tell me that Harold Perkins is a better player as an inside linebacker than as a rush edge player. He's not. He becomes just a guy in the college game that has very little impact on the game versus being the best defensive player in the country in 2022. So they've lost him. And so LSU still has a lot of talented pieces, but I've got to kind of question Brian Kelly at this point, and we'll take this call in just a second. I've got to kind of question Brian Kelly to a certain extent because we're now in year 3, and there's something called a transfer portal, which kind of leaves out excuses of having to build a program. And we'll see how they do this year. But I'm not seeing a great football team. I'm seeing a mid-level SEC team that will probably go 8-4. So I've not seen an improvement in this team. All right. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. We got Defiant on the line. Defiant, what's going on?
Nothing much, Mark. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. What's up?
That's good. That's good. I want to talk a little bit about Kansas football. I know they're not off to the best start to the season, ranked, and now they're 1-3. Jalen Daniels doesn't look that impressive to me so far. 1 touchdown and 1 interception. I know they lost this past weekend to West Virginia. West Virginia wasn't that good, I don't think, this year. And they also lost to UNLV. What do you kind of see their season ending up right now, the first 4 games and through the first conference game?
Well, I think that Kansas is lumped together with dozens of teams in college football where a couple injuries here and there, an easy schedule or difficult schedule, a bounce of the ball here and there, a good field goal kicker and punter, good special teams versus a kicker who misses a late kick or 2 that costs a game. All that stuff can be the difference between 5-7, 8-4. We've got 5. We will have, as we have every year in college football, we will have 5-7 football teams that are basically just as good as 8-4 football teams and vice versa. So this could be Kansas this year. Not that they're going to go 5-7 because the Big 12 is not great. But nothing has transpired with Kansas that I didn't anticipate. Not that I picked them to have a bad record. I believe I picked them 8-4, which they're really going to have to hustle to get to that mark. But I didn't pick them to win at Illinois. But was I surprised that they lost to Illinois? No. The UNLV game kind of took me by surprise. That one did. The West Virginia game, I don't know what happened in the last few minutes. I'd love to go back, and maybe I will tonight, and watch the last quarter of that game because they had a 10-point lead with like 2.5 minutes left and blew it. But I've not really watched them. We have to remember about Jalen Daniels, even though people are projecting great things out of him, that he played 3 games last year.
Yeah, and again, that UNLV game, UNLV right now looks like a pretty decent team, so I guess, that loss isn't too bad. Again, you lose to a group of 5 at home. But we did go beat Houston. I know Houston is not that good at all, so I don't know how you could really compare those two games for UNLV. But yeah, I don't know. Again, 2022, we had 18 touchdowns to 4 interceptions when he kind of took off for Kansas. Sure. And I mean, hey, Lance Leipold is not a bad head coach, in my opinion. I think Kansas is just a difficult place to win historically. And 8-4 is what I predicted him to go to. I didn't predict him to win the Big 12 or make the playoff, but I did predict him to at least win 2 of the, maybe at least 3. At least go undefeated in the non-conference a little bit, and then beat West Virginia in his first game, because West Virginia I don't think is that good as they used to be. Again, 9-4 last year, had a magical season there with Neil Brown. I don't think West Virginia is that good.
No.
I think they're a middle of the pack team as well. And just like you said, Mark, the Big 12 isn't that good. So Kansas could, win out the rest of the way, potentially go 9-3.
We will slip this. We will slip this comment through. Maybe my buddy Joey Foster is not around, but West Virginia wasn't that good last year. I don't care if they were 9-4. They weren't that good of a football team last year. They beat up on a bunch of lousy teams, or I shouldn't even say they beat up on them. They squeaked by a bunch of lousy teams. They beat no one any good.
Hey, I'm giving them credit, okay? I'm giving them some credit. I'm not giving a lot of credit. I'm giving them some credit for the way they finished last season. Secondly, I did want to talk about my Hoosiers a little bit. They are 4-0, essentially 5-0 with this week when you beat Maryland. I know they didn't play a tough non-conference. Charlotte may be the toughest team they played in their non-conference, and they played UCLA to open up a Big Ten play. Do you project them to potentially be a top 25 team if they win against Maryland this weekend, or do you still think you need to see a little bit more out of them to consider them top 25, or maybe just, a bowl team at that point?
Well, if Indiana beats Maryland this week, and I don't know what the line is on that game, where are they playing that game?
Bloomington.
Okay, so I'm guessing they're a 4 or 5 point favorite would be my guess.
somewhere around that.
So they beat Maryland, let's say. They are at home. Maryland's 7-5 team. So they've proven that, and that's a great accomplishment for Indiana football. If they beat Maryland this week, that for them is great. But top 25, that still doesn't prove to me that they're a top 25 team. Maybe if they beat Nebraska, beat somebody else. Of course, the record's going to dictate whether they finish in the top 25. If they go 8-4 and win a bowl game, they'll be in the top 25. Are they one of the 25 best teams in the nation? I'm certainly nowhere close to anointing them that. I don't think they are, but I need to see them play somebody legitimate. Now, this is the first step in doing that. They're going to be playing a much better team than what they've faced previously. What I like about what I'm seeing out of Indiana, and I saw quite a bit against UCLA. I didn't see it live, but I went back and watched quite a bit against UCLA. Did not see anything of the other 3 games, is that previous Indiana teams would win those games, but they'd win them by 10 points. Akron should have beaten them last year. They missed a field goal, Akron did, or else they lose to one of the 5 worst teams in the country. So Indiana just obliterating these teams, if you take one of Tom Allen's last 3 teams and they would have played this UCLA team, that would have been a dogfight to the end. But they wiped them off the field. They're doing what good teams are supposed to do. So that's a step in the right direction. That's a huge leap in the right direction. So that as much will show me that they're a fringe top 25 team than them even beating Maryland, let's say 30-27 this week.
Oh, I definitely agree. I think it comes with Cignetti being not taking his foot off the gas during some of these games. I know during the Western Illinois game at halftime, he was like, no, we still got to keep scoring. I think it just comes with the mindset of the coaching staff and the man in charge that they actually want to play for a guy that's like, just keep, we don't care how many points you score, as long as we get reps in, as long as we get actual gameplay in, and we also get touchdowns and everything. That's really what I think is what's making this team different than Tom Allen's team. I see a little bit of Tom Allen's team in like the first 2 seasons when he won 8-5 and then they made 6-2. I do think, again, so it's just basically Cignetti in this whole game plan. And I think Roque, too, coming in as a transfer quarterback is really changing the passing game a little bit.
Yes, I will get my look at Indiana football here soon. But again, I did catch up with the UCLA game for the most part, and it's impressive. After, or I will say before we got to see Michigan beat USC, somebody brought up Curt Cignetti's comment that he made at the basketball game when he was first announced as head coach, and he said, Purdue sucks, which of course they do. They really suck. And then he said, Michigan sucks, Ohio State suck. I was thinking, well, might be right on Michigan. But no, Michigan's not dead yet. Michigan is still very much alive.
But I think, again, it goes to that mindset that they can beat these teams. It's just, can they prove it on the field? That's the question. You have the mindset, but can they just follow through with it?
So, Defiant, I love all your takes and your thoughts, but you're going to have to back up on that one. You got to run that by me again.
No, I'm saying, so they have the mindset, Cignetti have the mindset of, hey, Michigan sucks, Ohio State sucks. But to me, they have to prove that they can beat those teams eventually.
Well, sure.
They can say they suck.
Well,
if you can't beat them, it's like, why do you even have the comment?
Yeah. Well, I can sit here and say Georgia sucks and Michigan sucks. They just won a national championship. Anybody can say whatever they want to say, but hey, the guy's backing it up. Hey, if he does nothing else this year, let's say, what reasonable games do they have left besides Maryland that they should win? I don't have their schedule in front of me right here.
I'll pull it up quickly as you.
Let's say they finish 7-5, so they win. What are they? 4-0.
Yeah, 4-0.
3-5 the rest of the way. To me, he's backed it up. He's improved that program, that team significantly. So I don't mind him going out and making all these claims because he doesn't have to go out and beat Ohio State. I don't think they play. Do they play Michigan as well this year?
Yeah, they play at home. They play Michigan and Ohio State.
They play both of them.
Yeah.
All right. Well, just the way I conduct myself, I think it's stupid for him to go out and say that Michigan and Ohio State suck. I don't even know what that means. Like, I don't even know what it means. Like, I don't even know how to gauge that comment because obviously they're elite. Your program sucks. They're elite. Even if he would beat them, what are you saying? If they suck, what, do you just suck less? I don't get the comment. I just think it's kind of dumb. It riled people up, and it was maybe what Indiana fans like to hear. I think it's kind of stupid, but the guy's backing it up. So I give him all the credit in the world. And even if they get trounced by Ohio State and Michigan, if he brings home a 7-5 record, I'm going to say, hey, that was a great season.
Mm-hmm. And again, Purdue sucks in general. Like, I get that point in the comment. Like, yeah, Purdue does suck. Like, historically, it's been a horrible football team. But yeah, I just don't get that comment at all because, again, like you said, they're Michigan and Ohio State. They're both elite. Like, I can get if Indiana was a blue blood and then Ohio State, Michigan sucked. I will get that, but it's not like that. It's definitely not like that.
I don't get it, period. Like, I don't. Somebody would have to explain that mindset to me. Does he understand that Purdue's football history is way better than Indiana's football history? Does he even understand that? I
don't know, man. He came from JMU, okay? He came from some success of winning at FCS level. So I don't know if he looked at the numbers historically or anything like that.
These are the times in which I wish I was on the ground at these schools and was some kind of local guy or maybe just be who I am, a national guy, but I could just have opportunity to fly in, go to the news conference. And I would just love to ask him that question and say, Coach, I understand that you may have made these comments with other motivations in mind, but you do realize that Purdue has a much better football history than Indiana. I would love to state that to him just to see what his response is, because it can't even be debated.
No, it can't, and that's the sad part of it. We're both bad, but Purdue has more success than Indiana has, and again, it doesn't make any sense. But I guess I would just like to see how the crowd reacted when they said Purdue sucks and how loud they got, and then how kind of quiet they got for Michigan and Ohio State sucks, because everybody knows that they're blue bloods and they can beat Indiana by 30 points on any given weekend.
Yeah, it's great, but it's a great story and good for him. And I know I've kind of criticized him a little bit, but if he believes that that's just part of, he doesn't have to answer to me. I'm just making my comments known, what my reaction is to it. But hey, he's the guy in charge. And if he believes that's going to, whether right or wrong, whether it's accurate or not, we know it's not accurate. But if that is part of what he needs to do to build this program and to sell the fan base, then he's doing the right thing.
Yeah, I'll be happy if he does beat Michigan and Ohio State at least once. I don't care if it's in the same season or if it's 2 seasons apart, 3 seasons apart. I think where he wants to be is where he can compete against Michigan and Ohio State. Maybe not for a national championship per se, but to be competitive with them at least. I believe that's what he's trying to build this program up to.
Absolutely. All right, Defiant, anything else for us?
No, Mark, that's about it. I thank you. Appreciate the call.
Defiant, I got to say before you take off, I thought you were a Michigan fan.
No, I'm a diehard Indiana fan. I grew up in the
fan.
state, been a fan for the longest time.
Okay. What do you usually call me about? I don't believe it's about Indiana.
Indiana. Yeah, sometimes I talk about Indiana most of the time. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I just don't say I'm an Indiana fan. I just talk about different perspectives.
I thought you usually called me about Ohio State and Michigan or something. Okay.
No, I'm the other end of the spectrum. I'm at the bottom,
I love that.
compared to you guys at the top.
No, I love to hear. We talk way too much about that, but of course they're controlling the sport. I get it. And
Yeah.
we got to talk about the important games and the national championship, and then we got to talk about in the off season, who's the best of all time and all that other business. But I love to hear from Indiana fans, Wake Forest fans, so forth. Do you know that we've got a new Indiana show?
Yes, I actually watched it on Tuesday.
Nice.
I was very excited. I was like, yes, he finally got some credit now. Before we got something going for us.
So appreciate you being here, Defiant. And if you didn't notice, it just dawned on me as I'm looking at myself in the window here. I've got Indiana colors on.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Appreciate the love. Appreciate the love support from you guys.
Thanks, Defiant. Have a good night.
Thank
you. Indiana colors. How about that? I guess they could be Florida State colors. They could be USC colors. They could be somebody else out there. Boston College colors. Indiana colors. We don't have an Indiana helmet. Why would I have Stanford and Clemson? Oh, well, they're playing this week, and we just produced that video with our buddy Steve Merrill from Wager Talk. Check out all the prediction leans, the betting leans that he provides us here at the Voice of College Football each and every week. They're all on the team channels. We did Ohio State, Michigan, Minnesota, Clemson, Stanford, Miami, Virginia Tech, on and on and on. Just about all the team channels. So check those out. And Steve, of course, gave us his under the radar selection. That's exclusive for you folks on Patreon and also as a YouTube premium member. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I believe this guy could possibly explain it a little bit better than me. So we'll give him a shot.
College football is even more exciting with some action on the line. And the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Let's start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread. I've got a 40-year track record. In fact, in 2023, at $100 played per game, you would have netted over $9,300. And guess what? I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill, our ace in the hole, show stopper from Wager Talk. 6 years with the voice of college football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick, which went 21-5 against the spread the last 2 seasons. I repeat, 21-5 against the spread. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Steve Dace and Matt Zemek. Become a YouTube channel member or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2024 a winner now.
Got James here. James has been watching a long time. I got to think, I'm going to take a guess that James is the longest standing member here at the Voice of College Football who is in the chat tonight. Cheryl's probably the longest of all time, still in the chat or in the chat on a regular basis. James says, Mark, maybe you will now realize wearing an Indiana colored shirt, blue LED light, purple reflection on white backdrop. Yeah. But I also understand that I've got no way to create a blue LED light. So actually what I understand, James, and I get your point, but it doesn't matter. Like, I didn't just notice this tonight. This is regardless of what I'm wearing, regardless of what we put on the monitor, regardless of any of that. Just the blue against that wall creates purple. So I've got nothing to put against the wall, meaning another LED color to make it look blue. So if somebody could give me that formula, it's kind of an off-white, actually. It's probably like a popcorn color wall is what it is. These are the kind of things that happened on YouTube. So we start this Indiana show, as I just mentioned, to Defiant. And folks, check it out. So it's going to be here on the main channel for a few weeks. And we will eventually move that over to the Indiana channel and also the Big Ten channel with Jeffrey. This is just typical stuff from YouTube. We started an Indiana channel. We launched, created it. We're set to go. We're ready to roll. They shut it down. Why did they shut it down? This is why YouTube shut down our Indiana channel, that of course just has college football content on it. They shut it down. Give me a second. Let me find it. Oh, very nice. So I will not rip on YouTube now because, okay, they took down our Indiana channel because of all sorts of violations of deception and spam and so forth. And I simply wrote back an explanation that, you know, we've been doing this a while. And basically we have no copyrighted material, no third-party content. We simply talk about college football. Like, we cannot have a more simple approach to YouTube content creation than what we do. Maybe these channels that have a live cam of the ocean would be about the only thing that's simpler than what we do. We just talk college football. So I explained that to YouTube. Fortunately, they just got back to me and said, yes, after taking another look, we can confirm that your channel does not violate our community guidelines. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for your patience. Yes, I was patient while we reviewed this appeal. Well, thank you, you too. I have no idea what they were looking at to determine that there was anything going on wrong with our Indiana channel. So an update to the update would be that we've got an Indiana channel and we will have an Indiana show on every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern time with Jeffrey Johnson. So we're looking forward to seeing Jeffrey on every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Defiant liked it this last week. So there you go. Go on Defiant's recommendation, not mine, with the Indiana show. Also, keep in mind, everyone, that the Amazon links in the description section of all the videos. I cannot express this enough. So this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to do. Okay. We are on YouTube in another window. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this because of my own account, but we'll see here in a second. You can get a look at what I'm watching on YouTube most of the time. All right, so how does this work? Who are these guys up here with this show, this Michigan show going on right now? All right, so, oh yeah, you go to any video. No, I don't want to do that. Go to any video. I wonder if I can look up my own, let's see, the Voice of College Football, Nebraska. We'll just do that. Go to any channel, any video, and let's go to our buddy Justin Adams and his videos on Nebraska. Can you guys see this? And then you just go to any video, and you got the Amazon link. It's down in the description section of the video. We should put that thing at the top. Let's do that. I'm going to do that very soon. But you see Amazon in all caps. You just copy this link. Look at that. Just copy that link. Did you see that? Yeah. Copy that link. And then we're going to take this link and we're going to put this link right up here. We're going to go to Amazon and watch. It's going to go right to my account, even though it had no idea that this is Mark Rogers. It's going to instantaneously know that's Mark. It's going to instantaneously know this is Bill, Judy, Jim, whatever your name is, whoever you are. See, Mark. Hello, Mark. Amazon knows. They immediately transform that Amazon link, that generic link tied to the Voice of College Football. Instantaneously, they convert it to your account, and therefore your credit card information, your everything is exactly the way it is. Your card, your history, you don't lose anything. So you get credit for the purchase, all of that. But we get a cut here at the Voice of College Football. How about that? So please use the Amazon link. You can talk to, I'll bring up John D'Adamo. He's probably not in the chat, but John uses the Amazon link all the time, says all the time, hey, it's just like using any other link to Amazon. So please use the Amazon link that we provide. It's in the description section of every video, every live stream here at the Voice of College Football. All right. We've got a decent Friday night, don't we? We've got Virginia Tech and Miami. I thought that was going to be a better matchup going into this season, and that could possibly be a trip-up spot for Miami en route to an ACC championship game. But Miami could go undefeated. Their schedule's awful. Louisville's going to be a difficult game for them. They're a 18-point favorite at home against Virginia Tech. Stranger things have happened, of course, but man, Miami is a superior team to Virginia Tech in every possible way. The other game on Friday is Washington-Rutgers. Like that one, interesting. The Washington College Football Playoff team of 2016 and the team the next year played Rutgers back-to-back. And of course, those Rutgers teams were atrocious. This will be a much more close, entertaining game between Washington and Rutgers. I have to think that the point spread is close. They play in Piscataway on Friday night. So the Fox game is Rutgers, Washington, and then, of course, ESPN's got Virginia Tech and Miami. We'll be here at some point after the games. I can't tell you exactly when. You guys may have to educate me on the games tomorrow night. I've got some plans, so I will be here, let's just say late night. I will be here late night on Friday after the ball games. So this is the College Football Show, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, Thursday and Friday, prime time, late night, after the ball games. Enjoy Army and Temple. They should be around halftime at this point, especially with Army running the football. All right, appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. We will see you post-game on Friday.
College football is even more exciting with some action on the line. And the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Let's start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread. I've got a 40-year track record. In fact, in 2023, at $100 played per game, you would have netted over $9,300. And guess what? I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill, our ace in the hole, show stopper from Wager Talk. 6 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick, which went 21-5 against the spread the last 2 seasons. I repeat, 21-5 against the spread. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Steve Dace and Matt Zemek. Become a YouTube channel member or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2024 a winner now.